I'm trying to figure out what's in the Texas water. You get Patrick Mahomes, Drew Brees, Matthew Stafford, Andrew Luck, Kyler Murray, Vince Young, Nick Foles, RG3, Ryan Tannehill, Baker Mayfield, Jalen Hurts. What the hell are they feeding them? What are they drinking in Texas to produce these type quarterbacks?
It's a way of life. From the time you're a kid, and you can go back even further than just the guys that you name. That's our current,
Right.
NFL recent guys that you see. But you can take it back. There were guys that you see in the NFL. Let's give you a great example. Andy Dalton. Right. What that guy did at TCU, what he did for the state of Texas. And if you're a Dallas, Fort Worth kid, you love the Frogs during that time.
Right.
So there have been great quarterbacks come through the state of Texas for a long, long time. And I think it comes down to this, that Texas high school football is a way of life. From the time you're 5, 6 years old, you're to Pop Warner, the flag football, all that stuff that's going on is a way of life. And I played baseball my whole life growing up. So football was never it for me until I got to be about 14 or 15 years old.
Right.
So just looking around and knowing the landscape now, it's only gotten bigger.
Right.
And it's only growing.
Right.
But there is something in the water. There's a bunch of dogs, not just at the quarterback position,
Right.
but all the way throughout.
Right.
I mean, you look at Myles Garrett, our defensive player of the year, we were talking about, like, there's some real cats that come from Houston, they come from Dallas, they come from San Antonio, and they come from Austin.
Right.
And it's just a great state for football. I mean, in my opinion, if you look at it countrywide, you got Cali, you got Texas, and you have Florida, where the dogs come from, in my opinion.
Do you remember watching those guys playing high school football when you were growing up? And did any of those guys you try to emulate?
Yeah, I think RG3 did an amazing job for me, and setting a great example of what a dual threat quarterback should be. I mean, I won the Heisman in 2012.
Right.
He won it in 2011. So I got to watch that crazy year of a high flying, throw it around the yard kind of offense, and a guy that could run. That track speed, everything that he had, complete package for what, in my opinion, a college dual threat quarterback should be.
Did you ever see any of those guys play high school football? Or just watched them on when the highlights came on television?
I would say I watched Kyler's career probably the closest.
Okay.
I had a huge hand in getting him to Texas A&M.
Right.
2012 and 13, whenever I was at A&M, I saw this kid, and I had known his dad, obviously a legendary quarterback at Texas A&M in his own right. But Kyler, I saw this kid who was ingrained and molded to be exactly where he's at today in his life. And I think that's what his dad did for him to, get him to a place of high level success. And if you know anything about Texas high school football, I would say his resume and what he did makes him hands down the best Texas high school football player to ever play.
Player, not just quarterback, player.
Ever in the state of Texas.
Wow.
I think he lost, I don't know if he lost the game.
One game.
Maybe one.
Right.
And that would have to be checked. But one. And what this kid did, made circles from not just Dallas, not just Houston, not just Austin.
Right.
From the top of the tip to the bottom, and from east to west.
Right. Well, what happened? Why wasn't Texas A&M able to keep him?
I have my opinion on this, and one that I think is very correct, in the fact that same time we signed 2 5-star quarterbacks. So we had Kyler Murray and Kyle Allen in that same class.
Right.
After I left, the direction of the program, I felt, lost a lot of its stability. We had really good coaches in our organization, but we didn't hone in and detail and work and focus on one guy who was going to be our guy.
Right.
They played this game of back and forth and not
settling on a guy.
Kyler Murray.
Right.
What are we talking about? Lost one game his whole career? You're not going to go give this guy the keys? I don't care what he's doing. College is a time as a freshman that you mold men.
Right.
You mold these guys into what you want them to be. When I went to college, my dad shook Mike Sherman, shook his hand and looked him in the eye and said, "This is where you take over and molding my son into being the grown-up that he needs to be one day." And I think with that, Coach Sumlin lost a little bit of what he was originally there to do.
Right.
You get a new contract, you go to the SEC, you win 12 games, you get a Heisman winner, you're talking about new stadium, you're talking about new deal. Your focus shifts from what the main thing is to a whole bunch of bullshit,
right,
in my opinion. And they didn't just hone in, and they didn't give him the keys. And I think a lot of that's to be said has to deal with Kyle Allen as well.
Right.
I think he made it very difficult behind the scenes for what people didn't know to just give Kyler the keys. And, you know, in my opinion, where our program is now as a football program, that is the one step and one thing and mistake that we made that is keeping us from being where we want to be, and especially during that time, why we didn't have success.
Because Kyler was supposed to be you. He was supposed to be that transition because of what you started in SEC, and we'll talk about that Saturday afternoon in Tuscaloosa and what you actually did down there. So that was supposed to be the next step. Okay, Johnny built this. He has it going. Guess what? We have somebody to step right in and keep it going.
Boom, right there in front of your face. I worked my ass off behind the scenes to get Kyler Murray to Texas A&M. Loved him. Loved what he stood for, loved who he was as a kid, loved that he looked up to me at that point in time. You know, how times have changed since then, but at that point in time, the look I got in his eyes when I hosted him around and took care of him was that he looked up to me as something he wanted to be like me.
Right.
And I could see that in his eyes as a kid. I have very mixed emotions and strong feelings about that with what happened through it. And like I said, it comes back to, I think Kyle did a really good job of playing good football. He was a very capable quarterback. You know, he's still, you know, behind Josh Allen a little bit right now and working with him and has been right next to him for a long time. So that says something about his character, who he was as a football player, albeit not all the accolades and everything you would expect, but a very solid, you know, fundamental football player.
But when you watch Kyler transfer and then you see what he did for the University of Oklahoma, taking him, I think he took him to the college football playoff both years. He won the Heisman Trophy. And
Ouch.
And you're saying, hold on, we let that guy walk out the door? Hold on. And then I think he'd have been successful in the offense, obviously with the head coach they had at Oklahoma, I think, USC now, Lincoln Riley. And I think Cliff was it, Lincoln Riley. And you say like, well, I don't really care what system it is. You see how Kyler, what he can do? He can throw the ball, he can run. He's a true definition of a dual threat quarterback. No matter how small he is, I think a lot of people like kind of discounted him. Maybe Texas A&M didn't realize what they had because they're like, okay, you walk out the door, you only 5, whatever it is, you're not gonna be. And he catch fire.
Did they not just learn it with me? Did they not watch the 5'11" guy come and rock the world and put it on fire?
Right.
They believed in me.
Right.
And that came from Cliff Kingsbury.
Right.
That's where I got mine from.
Right.
That's where I got my confidence. That's where I got my guy who believed in me. Jake Spavital was our offensive coordinator when Kyler was there. And as I was in Cleveland, I was talking to him quite a bit, figuring out what the vibe was. You know, I went back to games. You know, I went and wanted to see Kyler, and the mesh and the feel just like wasn't there for cohesiveness. And, you know, I remember talking to Jake about it and him just kind of being like, I remember him saying this, that it's like kind of out of my hands, that it was like above the offensive coordinator's pay grade, which only leaves one person left.
The head coach.
That's all it leaves.
Right.
So whether it was, you know, I'm speculating, but at the end of the day, that's what I was told of what it was.
What was your relationship like with Kevin Sumlin?
My relationship with Kevin Sumlin was great. You know, he was my dog. You know, he rode for me hard. He went to bat for me. He went to war for me in a multitude of different scenarios. You know, I think where our relationship fell out a little bit is, you know, how do you have a guy who's a grown man who, I look back on this now, reflective in this. You know, how do you have a guy who's a grown man, you know, telling me what I should do? Obviously, my coach, my guy I'm looking up to, my head football coach, is telling me to live a certain way and put all this party and this behind you. But if you know anything about Kevin Sumlin, it's what he's doing behind the scenes.
Oh, he's partying too?
So from my eyes,
so you say,
it's hypocritical.
We partying together.
We're a 40-40 club in New York.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We in the back room playing pool with Ace of Spades. We're chilling.
Right.
Coach is there. This is what he does. So now looking back at it, it's hypocritical to me. And our relationship is great and will forever be great. And no, I do not sit here today as a judge of a man, a judge of a person who helped get me to the point of where I wanted to be in life. By no means whatsoever. I'm calling a spade a spade.
Right.
And I'm just going to be and give the God's honest truth as what I know it to be.
Right.
That ruffles some feathers, so be it.
Right.
It's the way the world goes.
Are you surprised that he hasn't got a head coaching job?
No.
You're not surprised?
Mm-mm.
Why?
I think what made Coach Sumlin so great is no longer really with him right now, where his focus is. You know, I think life has gotten the better of him a little bit. And I'm a prime example of, I don't want to sit up here and be a preacher, you know? I don't want to sit up here and tell anybody they're living wrong or anything like that, because that's what it used to feel like me back in the day
When they were
people
trying
were
to
doing
kill
that
Johnny.
to me. So I don't see the same spark. You know, I don't have much of a relationship anymore with him anymore. We'll reach out and talk like here and there, maybe once a year, but not like I have the relationship with my other coaches. And, you know, my gut instinct and feel is, and I know this because of instances that happened when I left. All right, I'm leaving to go to the draft, and I'll paint a picture for you. It's 2000, the spring of 2014, December 2013, right in there about December, January, I'm getting ready to make this decision on if I'm going to the NFL draft or I'm going to stay. And I found this out 5 years later from my dad. But my dad went and had a meeting with Kevin Sumlin and pretty much went to him man to man and was like, we'll take $3 million and we'll stay for the next 2 years. And my dad says this is true as today as he did when he told me. He left. He did the same thing that he did when Cliff Kingsbury asked him to be the highest paid offensive coordinator the year before. And Cliff would have stayed with me another year and we would have ran it back and gone for another one.
Right.
But he comes to someone, he asks him for X amount, someone, he had this ego about him that what we built, was all him.
Right.
And then you start that next year, okay? I leave, decide to go to the NFL. This deal doesn't work. Kevin Sumlin kind of blows us off. We can do this without you type of vibe, okay? So the fall comes around, 2014 A&M football season. Kenny Hill is named our starting quarterback. We win our first 5 games of the year. We're 5-0. We're top 10 in the country. I ain't getting no love in the program.
Yeah, because I'm thinking, I remember hearing it, and they talk about Johnny who?
Who?
Because he had, I think he had
South
like
Carolina, 5 touchdowns, first game of the season.
Okay. So you remember hearing it also. So hold on, I want to make sure, I got to backtrack.
Yeah, back it up.
You said your dad went to Kevin Sumlin.
Yep.
And says for $3 million.
We're staying for 2 more.
Now, you do realize this is prior to NIL.
I agree.
So this is a backroom deal.
It went on for 30, 40 years before. It was the same way that was happening when you was getting recruited back in the day.
And you guys, you know, y'all, Texas A&M got money for, Texas A&M, nobody got no money like Texas A&M. Y'all got the big dogs.
Aggie ring, baby.
Y'all got the big dogs. And so $3 million, if he had gone to any of the boosters and said, you know what?
Done.
Johnny's dad said he'll stay for an additional 2 years if we just break him off $3 million.
Just keep it, cash, throw it somewhere. We'll get it later. We don't need it right now.
Right.
But for my security, if something happens for 2 years down the road,
Right.
And my dad did this without me knowing, and I ain't mad at him about it for
Right.
nothing. It's
Right.
the way the business worked back then.
Right.
There was a bag man. There was a bag man at LSU. There was a bag man at Bama. There was a bag man at every school around the country if you were competing for a national title. It is what it was, and it was always that way until we're into the NIL portion of everything now, the way it should be.
If I ask you, I say, Johnny, who's your Mount Rushmore high school quarterbacks in the state of Texas? What 4 heads you putting up there?
Kyler Murray is for sure. Andrew Luck was really, really, really good.
Okay.
Who else, man? Who else?
I mean,
RG3 is up there for sure. You can't leave RG3 off that
'Cause you
list.
got
with
Pat Mahomes,
with
Drew
winning a
Brees,
Heisman.
Stafford.
And then, oh man, tough.
DY, you got Vince Young.
Tough. Oh, you can't
Baker,
label it to
Jalen.
4. You can't label it to 4. I played against Baker, so I didn't get to see him start at quarterback, but we played Lake Travis, his high school. I mean, this is an impossible list. It probably takes 5. The best that I got to be around, Andrew Luck was a little bit before me. Mm-hmm. So from what I saw and I remember, Kyler, top notch. You know, I didn't get the Breeze days. Stafford, for the legacy he left at Highland Park and what you would hear about, man, nobody had an arm in the state of Texas like him ever. So Kyler, Stafford, for sure. I think you have to throw RG3 in there for winning a Heisman. I think you have to throw Baker in there for winning the Heisman. So you got what? 3 Heisman Trophy winners.
Yep.
And Stafford.
Yep.
Pretty good.
And your GOAT is Kyler.
To me, and he's younger than me.
Wow. Want to join Club Shay Shay? Become an official member by hitting that subscribe button, where you never know who's going to be joining us for drinks and conversation. Don't be late to the party, because you know we like to do something before 2 something.